Hello, I'm putting a special video out, I think mainly for SNED, but for anybody else that hasn't quite understood my what has been caricatured as it doesn't really matter sort of line of line. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Things have changed. Basically, things have changed. Life is not what it used to be. Let's do a macro one first. Let's say, for example, a country, France, UK, doesn't really matter, a country decides it gets its top bods together, politicians and unions and business leaders, whatever, and decide that they need to go out for a big push in the world or their economy is going to fall apart. They won't be able to afford their pensions, etc. Whatever it is that drives them to this, they actually get together and decide to do it next week, let's say. So they do it. And they do government policies, whatever it might be, to help industries with this great export push. And the unions go along and everything is technically wonderful. Everything's coming up roses. And then, let's say, and this is why I kind of put this out, then you say, well, voila, they have done something and now they're ahead of the game. Now, normally, in the, let's say, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, this sort of thing was possible and a country could do it and it would make a huge difference. Because everybody else would be sailing serenely on doing their own normal thing. There was no great turbulence. But what could happen, now obviously I'm not saying it would happen because nobody knows what's going to happen, but let's say the country sets up and wasn't an particularly exporting type country, and in 5 years' time is an exporting type country, and then for reasons unknown, the United States goes into its shell again, like it did 100 years ago, and says, we are now going to go to be a non-importing country, and we are going to now try and make all of our stuff made in the USA and all that sort of thing, and they could put tariffs on imports and all that sort of stuff. Now, it's just a silly example, but it's not that silly. That this sort of thing could happen. Now, the country that set itself up for all these exports needs an importer to import their exports. Now, if the United States then stops basically importing, what their plan was has been negated. Now, this is just, I had to pick an example to start with. That was just one. But I'd ask you or say to you that you can pick any example that you like now. It really doesn't matter what any one individual, family, village, town, county, state, region, whatever it might be, does. It can never really be known at all whether it's going to be good or bad, because of this crisis, things will not be sailing serenely on forward. The next door neighbour, the next village, the next town, the next state, the next country, the next grouping of countries will not be sailing on serenely. They will be doing something. It's a great big stormy sea out there. Yeah. Now, it's in the free will debate a bit that I've done so many videos on. There's an analogy often used about being a kind of something in water, on the surface of the water. Let's I'll change it slightly and say that the person, an individual, is meant to be something like a person in a canoe, and you're canoeing on the water, and circumstance is the water, but you can turn left and right, and if it's a really calm period, you can really put your paddle in and turn yourself round, and if you're strong enough, you can paddle up upstream for a while until you get weak enough and the stream turns you around and sends you down again, but then you can still steer to a greater extent. That analogy for that sort of thing now, in a more macro sense, is the world, but it's not a nice calm little stream anymore. We're in the rapid section, and in the rapid section, if you can do anything, all you are going to do is to try and keep yourself vertical. You know, if there's a whopping great rock ahead, I think the tendency is to miss rocks, but you might try and dig in to try and miss a rock as well. But there's not nearly the wiggle room and the maneuver room that there was in the old days. So how can I put this another one? Because it doesn't really matter what example you come up with. I would come up with a counterexample of, well, let's do something easy. Okay, something that normally, or even moving into this crisis or now, you wouldn't think could go wrong at all. So let's say your local area, whatever it is, town, village, even a city to a push, it's really got to be a village or a town, I suppose, says this park here that isn't very visited, we'll leave that park there, or bits of this park and bits of that park are now going to be lotteried out to people that can then use them to grow vegetables. Something like that. Seems there's nothing wrong with the idea. It's a brilliant idea in its own little way. Especially if you've got lots of parks, you divide off bits, and then people come in and grow their own veggies, and they can sell them down the market for whatever it might be. And then it takes off even more. Less and less people go to parks, and more is set aside for veggies, and it's a great, wonderful success. Now, this is highly unlikely in the Western thing, because there are still regulations against people growing their own vegetables and selling them in the market and all that sort of stuff. But if that's got round, you can say, well, then you've got this, in a normal, calm sort of stream, you'd have this quirk of a village town that had this little home industry of growing and distributing their own vegetables. But if it happened now, because of the turbulence, something else would become. There would maybe be, who knows what it might be, because it's seemingly such a solid idea. Either the government would crack down on it because of something. They didn't want, the market was starting to become so big that they were starting to use barter and their own money for it. The vegetables became that village E. coli and were killing people. Unlikely. The next village down, or the next town down, or the next county down that used to sell them vegetables come in with their tractors one market day and mow them all down, starting a great fight between the stall holders, the veggie growers, and the next county down farmers. Or it becomes so successful that the next town across, and then the next town and the next town, all start doing this parks thing, and the farmers of the area go out of business, etc., etc. What I'm saying is, in the old calm stream, it seemed as though we could do our own thing and steer our own way. But there will be nothing that anybody can do now with any confidence at all that they can even vaguely imagine what the resultant future of their actions will be anymore. Because it's not as though everybody else is just joggling along. They are not now joggling along. Everybody is starting to hit the rapids. And all of these interactions are going to be interacting with other interactions. And your little interaction is going to be as equally as affected by everybody else's interactions. What used to be a powerful going forward and making strides and causing your own future is not anymore. Whatever you do, due to the turbulence that we've hit, the outside world's influences now are so strong that you planning a future, or you even doing something, it's going to be incalculable whether what you did caused this, that, or the other, because there will be so many other interferences that have come in. That is kind of what I'm trying to say. It is a bit subtle, and it may be too subtle because it can't be seen now, but I think increasingly it will be more and more visible that whatever you do, you'll never be able to calculate how it has turned out, because so many other things have gone on around it to have influenced and overwhelmed the picture that you think that you have created by your own actions. It's just that clarity is just now starting to become an impossibility. It's just going to be a blur of surf splashing around as we crash down the rapids. Yep, we'll do things, but we'll never ever be able to calculate whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, or whether it actually worked in any way, or whether we actually made it happen, or it was the actions on both sides of us that made it happen. It's just going to be uncalculatable in every way, shape and form. But maybe that's all a bit mystic. But I don't believe I believe in a couple of years it won't seem mystic at all.